Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Panel by Panel Comics channel with your host, Jay. Today, we're starting a brand new series, but this will be every single week. It is the Panel by Panel Comics Review. It is exactly what it sounds like. I am going to be reviewing the books that are ongoing, so they're not necessarily the first or second or new start of a story arc as what is my buy or sell videos. But this is going to be basically my review, my personal review of. Let's just get right into it. First book I'm going to be talking about is DC KO tie-in. This is issue number 32. Now, I'm going to be kind of harsh, and I'm going to say the best part about this comic book is the fact that it's over. That Layman and Woods run on the Titans is done. This story, it essentially follows Raven and Nightwing trying to convince Amethyst that she needs to do the right thing and to become an ally. And you also see Donna Troy and Roy Harper battling it out with Grail is her name. We saw them in the comic book. The artwork is okay from Pete Woods, but I barely read any of his run, John Layman and Pete Woods. I only read the tie-ins for DCKO, so this might be better if you are a Titans fan or if you read this run from the very beginning. Me personally, I did not, but from everything I heard, a lot of people thought that this run was pretty bad from the Titans with John Layman and Tom Woods. But I can't wait for Tom Bromble and the new run with the new Titans with the next issue of issue number 33. But I gave Titans a 2 out of 5. Next is another DC comic. We have Nightwing. This is issue 135. Now, this was a good book. Don't get me wrong. A 3 out of 5 is what I'm going to give it. And it was still a very, very solid issue. The artwork was good. I like the facial expression there of Batgirl. The only thing that was wrong with this series, or with this little arc, I couldn't get into the villain. His name is Zanny, and this felt more like a Nightwing Prime issue rather than a Nightwing comic. So we did see Nightwing essentially go in to try to save or help these kids escape the Circade of Sin, and of course, Dick Grayson has a past with the circus. And Nightwing literally thinks to create a ladder with his mind, like you just saw, and does, and then climbs out. Boom. They escaped the Zanny, which that was pretty scary. I'll say that was one of the best parts of the comic book, was that little spider-looking Zanny. But we see Nightwing Prime sacrifice himself, and he's basically going to be stuck in the fifth dimension with Zanny and the Cirque du Sin for the rest of time. But there is a couple of little clues that they might be coming back, and I'm sure that Zanny will be coming back as well as Nightwing Prime, because I thought it was a pretty fun character. But Nightwing issue number 135, I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, I will be buying the next issue, and it is the start of a noir type of story arc for Dick Grayson and Nightwing. But if it doesn't intrigue me enough, I'm unfortunately going to have to drop the series. Next is the first independent comic book of the day. It's Deluge. This is issue number 4. Now, it's another good horror book by Ignition Press and Cullen Bunn. This one follows an all-female prison that is currently in a flood, and there are sea monsters attacking and killing the woman and the guards in the prison. Now, it's an okay book. I just don't like the concept of a flooding event with the all random female cast, and it still hasn't stopped raining, and people are constantly going in the water and just going in there dying. There's no real story other than a different group of female prisoners every single comic going into the water and getting killed by these creatures. Now, it did look really good. I did enjoy the art from Marika Cresta, but it reminds me of the Siren-like monsters in a way from Ice Age 4, where these monsters in Deluge, they make these people see certain things. We see one lady sees her mom, and another person was apparently seeing her husband that she killed. Now, there is one more issue of this miniseries as we see the guards finally starting to go into the prison to go take a look. But I'm going to complete it. This was issue 4 of 5. Still a solid issue. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next is our first Marvel comic of the day. This is Amazing Spider-Man. This was issue number 22, number 986 Legacy, as we're getting closer and closer to issue 1000. Now, this is a book where not a whole lot happened other than Peter Parker returning to Earth as he said his goodbyes to Rocket and the rest of the crew. He did bring a couple people with him. He brought Glitch, Rayleigh, and the little symbiote character. I forgot his name, but he's so cute. It's one of my favorite parts of this comic. But we do see Rayleigh right away start to sniffle, and she is not accustomed to Earth, and it seems like she's not going to be able to live there on her own. But this comic, it does follow Ben Reilly, and we see Peter Parker and Ben Reilly really get into a heated argument, and Peter Parker was like, "You ruined my life. As soon as you come here, all my friends, they just fall apart whenever I'm not talking to them." And Ben Reilly says, "If your life fell apart because I didn't return a few calls, maybe whatever you built wasn't as strong as you thought it was." That probably hit very deep there with Peter Parker. And he eventually went looking for Aunt May, and basically they found each other. There wasn't a whole lot in this story to really say, and you barely saw Norman. Like, I know there's Norman, that is Norman in the cover, but there wasn't a whole lot of Norman. It was just a whole lot of Peter fighting against Ben Reilly. I gave this issue a 3.5 out of 5. Next is a Dark Horse comic book. This is American Caper. This is issue 4 out of 5. Yet again, not a lot of progress in this story. That's kind of where this 3.5 range falls for me, where there's not a whole lot of progress in the story. I enjoyed it, but I want to see there be some moving parts. We get a little flashback here of Chicago of 2006. We see our characters of William and Marnie, and what their relationship used to be like, and now she's an angry lady that believes in the Illuminati and killing these quote-unquote libtards, and she goes to this Welcome Patriot site, and that is where the plot points start to come together. You see potentially that she's going to end up trying to kill her husband, and that is a very much possibility, as we see her talking to this character of Hera76 online, it's AR-15 EDC. That's the name of the character, or this online person that she's in this chat room with. But we do see a whole lot of tension here. This was where the main story took place. It says, meanwhile, across town. And this was Freddy, a character that we were introduced to in the previous issue, just a little bit. But it was essentially, he did a bank robbery, got caught, went to prison, broke out, and now he's going to enact revenge across the other characters in the story, or the other people that were involved in the bank robbery. And we also see Mr. Olds and the character that is a Mormon that ended up killing somebody. I always forget what his name is, but anyways, he went and met up with the dude, and potentially there's some problems happening for the Mormon family across, or the neighbors of William and Marnie. But essentially, Freddy was one of the only people caught in the bank robbery, and Freddy tried to enact revenge. And did he or did he not? You're going to have to see. And did the whole thing go up into a blaze? It definitely did. This is still one of my favorite books out. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Next, we go to the Energon universe. It's G.I. Joe. This is issue number 19, written, of course, by Joshua Williamson, with the art done by Andrea Milana. We are immediately starting off with Cobra Commander and the Cobra Initiative. As we see, Zartan is now beginning his hunt for Energon. We know that he is still under the disguise of the General, and this was the main plot point of the whole series, or comic issue. Duke versus Hound. Essentially, Duke feels betrayed by Clutch and Hound, specifically Clutch, because he's his best friend, and he couldn't tell him that he basically befriended one of these Autobots or robots that they call him. Of course, we know he's a Transformer, but Duke doesn't know any about that. And it felt like this whole issue was watching your two other best friends fighting, and you're in the middle, and you just keep telling them to make up and move on. There wasn't a whole lot of progress with the story here, other than Hound and Clutch are basically being interrogated, but we do see that they are introducing the Mask Initiative for G.I. Joe, as they go with the character of, I forgot what his name was. I thought I put it down here. Yeah, Matt Tracker. So you see that they are trying to go after him, or rather he's being introduced or reintroduced into the series. This was still a solid issue. I just want Duke and Clutch to get along. The artwork was really good. G.I. Joe issue number 19, 3.5 out of 5. Down to the final 4, and we get it started with X-Men. This is issue number 25. Now, this was a solid issue. However, I do have to ding it a little bit. It probably would have been a 4.5, maybe even my 5-star pick of the week. But I do have to ding it for being $6, and it didn't include more pages. It was still 32 pages for the price of $6. Now, this was technically the complete wrap-up of a pretty poor Age of Revelation event for Marvel Comics. I gave the whole event a 2.5 out of 5. This issue, it focuses around the X-Men heading to visit the Morlocks, and they run into this Nazi group that is led by the Von Strucker twins. Now, the group battles it out as the X-Men, easily defeat them, but we do see later in the issue Crimson Commando make his introduction into the series. Now, he is a former ally of Captain America way back in basically the Hydra days, whenever he was initially introduced. But he is kind of thinking about what to do. Is he going to become an ally or an enemy of the X-Men? Now, there is also a pretty tasty cliffhanger at the end of this issue, leading us into the direction of this new Shadows of Tomorrow event or era for the X-Men. I gave this X-Men issue number 25, the celebratory 25th issue for Jed MacKay. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Next is Captain America. This is issue number 7, Doom's Shadow Part 2. This is Captain America. We immediately kick it off with Red Hulk and Steve Rogers getting into a battle, and the art was very good, as it starts with that little mini scrap with Steve Rogers and Red Hulk, and then of course Nick Fury comes in to stop everything as it was about to get very heated. But we see the return of a character called Marius Wolf. He was introduced in the earlier issues of Captain America. I mean, this series, like from issues 2 to 5. He's now known as Salvation, and he calls himself the head of True Latveria. And people are calling him a Victor Von Doom 2.0. And Steve, he basically goes to this family and has dinner with them. Just a random family in Latveria. And he's just trying to figure out what the situation is and what the people of Latveria truly feel about what is going on right now. And he sees people sneaking in the backyard. And he goes to see who that is, and there's a big reveal in this comic book that's going to be massive for the Armageddon event. This is another really good issue from Chip Zdarsky. He had 2 really good issues, in my opinion, for this Armageddon event so far, with this issue and the Wolverine Weapons of Armageddon issue number 1 that I talked about on Buy or Sell this week. But Captain America, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Next is another Ignition Press book, but this is Arcadia. This is issue number 3, written by the Miranda brothers, and also the art is done by Inaki Miranda. Now, what an issue. There's a little QR code in here that plays music during a certain part of the comic book. By the way, a tremendous idea to put a little QR code that the person can scan that's reading the issue, and you play the music during that part of the comic book that you want them to feel some more emotion towards, because it's all well and great reading the pages off the book and seeing the characters, but it really added such an emotional feel to the story. And by the way, I highly recommend that you do that. But the story starts showing the character of Hulu and Weedy. They had a conversation at the very beginning about living life to the fullest, and talking about why you should live life to the fullest. But we cut right back to Hulu as he's essentially, I guess, daring to almost end his life as he's going around this groups of hordes and this huge monster here. That's absolutely insane. But he ultimately found these uber pills, and he takes them back to Weedy, who is unfortunately dead. Here are the uber pills shown in the book. But he takes them back to Weedy, and he's unfortunately dead. But he completed this device, and it reveals what the pearl is really used for with all the people in this Arcadia post-apocalyptic world that they now live in. And it basically shows what the world was before and how it became what it is now. And it is absolutely beautiful. And with the music behind it, with some of those flashbacks, it almost made me cry. This was in a beautiful issue by the Miranda Brothers, a great ongoing for Ignition Press. I highly recommend this book. It was nearly my pick of the week, but I'm going to have to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Still a 9 out of 10 essentially. What a book by the Miranda Brothers and Ignition Press. Now, before I talk about my pick of the week, there were some other books to talk about over on Buy or Sell this week. Of course, Absolute Batman, issue number 17 with Absolute Poison Ivy being revealed. This was an amazing book. I highly, highly recommend that you get it. This was a 4.5 out of 5 for me. Still, one of the best series going right now in all of comic books. I also recommend Dungeons of Doom. This was issue number 2, a great, great book. I believe I gave it a 4 out of 5. I gave Smile for the Camera a solid, good rating. I can't quite remember. I think it was either a 3.5 or a 4. A really good book there. And then another Armageddon book, Wolverine, Weapons of Armageddon. I believe I gave that one a 4. And then also Null. I said to buy into Null. I'm just a big fan of Al Ewing's writing. He's doing a really good job with Null. I think it's a really solid book. I believe I gave Null either a 4 or a 4.5. But I will say, none of those books were my pick of the week. And this might come as a surprise, but I'm going with Fantastic Four issue number 8. This is Invincible Woman part 3. This is the issue where we find out why Galactus is looking for Susan Storm and why he sent that message out to the universe. So we start off with the Fantastic Four, an old school Fantastic Four. And we start out with the traditional story of Susan Storm / the Invisible Woman. And it felt like this was more of a throwback, and we were like, okay, they're just showing us more of the Invisible Woman that we know, just showing the beginning once more. I was a little confused, and then you see it gradually expanding, and we see her going to bed, and she was fighting all these different demons and villains in her sleep, and we find out she ended up killing everybody in her home world. So you automatically know this isn't the Susan Storm of the comics universe. This is an alternate reality, and it's actually the Invincible Woman that does get revealed later on in this issue, like what she looks like nowadays and all the stuff that she went through. But this did a tremendous job at making you attached to a character that, of course, you know, but with the subtle changes that made her into this crazy, guilt-ridden human being that turns into a massive villain and honestly could take over the universe if she really wanted to. I mean, we're talking about she was killing people like Thanos in her dreams, which means she was killing Thanos in real life. It was just a vision during her dream. Not quite sure how that got triggered. I'm sure it'll be probably expanded upon later, but the artwork from Humberto Ramos is perfect for a Fantastic Four comic book. And I'm not even a big Fantastic Four fan, but this was an amazing issue by Ryan North, and he's absolutely killing it. Fantastic Four was my pick of the week. I gave it a 5 out of 5 for the star rating, but that will do it for the panel by panel comic review. If you did enjoy and you made it all the way through, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. Comment what your favorite comic book was for the week. But that will do it, guys. Stay healthy, stay great, and I'll see you guys next time.